and I want to get right to our first guest of the show. This is Patty Vasquez. We're joined by Congressman Mike Quigley. Sir, thank you so much for having the time to join us and update folks. And I don't know, do you find that you are able to soothe folks at all, or what space are you in right now with everything that's happening all at once everywhere?
Yeah, it's a great question. Under the first Trump administration, when I was speaking to groups, I was told it sounded something like group therapy. I was reminded that people want to feel better after the session. So I get that. But as you know, there's no sugarcoating what's taking place. I do think, at the end you come out with a resolve and an understanding that everyone has to become involved in this. And, yeah, you know what? As you say it, when November happened and Trump won again, it really hit me. I was tired. I was like, oh, boy, we're going to do this again. And as time went on, the gas tank got filled. I'm ready to go. So there's a lot to do. There's too much at stake. There's no crying in baseball or politics.
Yeah.
We've got work to do. Well,
and I think we all have to pace ourselves. It's just hard to manage that pace. So I know that we were going to cover the address he made to Congress, but so many things have even happened since then. The number of lies in that alone were stupefying. I mean, were you? Did you stay in the room? I haven't kept track of who stayed and who had ping pong paddles.
I couldn't go.
Okay.
And here's why. I get that there are certain norms in politics and government that even if you disagree with somebody, you hear them out, you go there, there's a respect to the office, even if you don't respect the individual. But in that room on January 6th, just a few years ago, the President of the United States, then Donald Trump, sicked 20,000 people in an attempt to overthrow the government. 5 police officers died, 140 were injured. And if it wasn't for very brave D.C. and Capitol Police, I'm not sure if our republic would have stood. They were 70 feet away from getting the number 2, 3, and 4 in succession. And obviously, my life was at risk. So I'm supposed to show that person respect. I'll do my job. I'll work with people to get things done. I know what compromise means, but I don't have to show Donald Trump any respect. And showing up at the State of the Union to me was just something I couldn't do.
Well, then to that, I think a lot of us express that same sort of sentiment, like that people have been, saying, well, we have to work with somebody. Let's, reach across the aisle. And I feel like that is that absolutely gone because, the idea of censuring somebody and not is it censuring we didn't make that kind of effort or at least vote on it in the same way for Congresswomen Boebert and Green. Why is this different? And why did 10 Democrats vote to do so?
That was disheartening, to be honest. It's a little tough. When I got sworn in 16 years ago, the first person that came up to me, special election, and you're, doing it by yourself, of all things, was a Republican named Mark Kirk, who later became our senator. And he did give good advice. He said, the only thing that gets done here is when we meet in the middle. So there's a lot of truth to that. But, what I tell folks who are looking from afar, not looking at what this president's doing, moving us toward more of an autocracy, is you meet in the middle when the middle is reasonable, right? And you both benefit. That's a two-party democracy at work. But when one side takes the most extreme positions, it's not my job to go way out there to meet them.
Yeah.
They have to come back to the norm. And, I tell students that the constitutions are our foundation, the laws are critical, but probably more important are norms of how you act in a decent democracy. And the president's not there. It wasn't just the Democrats voting to censor Mr. Green. What was more disheartening for me was the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, a Republican, right, saying that our spending bills are optional. The president, they're guidance for the president. If the Republicans are willing to cede the power of the purse, which is fundamental Article 1, then I don't know why they're bothering to show up, because you've just handed him literally the keys to the kingdom, keys to the cash register for sure. And then we're in some big trouble.
Well, that seems to have been what the intent was that day that, the memo was sent out that all federal funding for grants and programs were going to be basically blockaded until a review of whether or not they had DEI programs, that there was woke or Marxism. And from what I understand, this is the OMB's chief legal counsel, Mark Paoletta's intent for impoundment. It seems like that's the whole kit and caboodle for what you're talking about, yes?
Yeah, and look, if people want some reason to feel optimistic, the first barrier there of restraint has been the courts, and there have been some real victories. I think the real test is still to come, because we are in a constitutional crisis, but the crux of that will be when the president decides to disregard the courts. So, that's going to be the fundamental issue there. But the courts have stood up in that vein, and that's a big deal. I think the second reason they should feel optimistic is we have in Congress two real powers right now in the minority. We have our voice and we have our votes. So, while I was disheartened that there were Democrats who voted to send Ukraine, last week when we had the finance package, which is the precursor to them doing the big tax cuts for billionaires, the reason they're doing all these cuts to find money to find tax cuts for billionaires, the Democrats hung together. And the meetings I've had this week in caucus and with the Democratic appropriators, I don't think we're going to help them at all toward this end. And the Republicans have always shown some ability to be ungovernable. That will be the difference. And I think the final point is people's voices do matter. When you look at even Republican polling from the end of the year to now, our newly minted oligarch, who the president seems to have anointed with extraordinary powers, has dropped in polling, 50%. So, look, it disturbs me that we have somebody in this position doing these horrible things. But I do see people's voices matter, and it's starting to have an effect on how Republicans act and how they're speaking out about potential cuts to Medicaid.
For folks who aren't familiar, Congressman Mike Quigley of the 5th Congressional here in Illinois shows up. You do. I mean, you show up at neighborhood association meetings, at farmers markets. You are out there and available for folks to share their minds. And we are seeing that the Republicans now want to hide. They're being told, right, by leadership to not have any more town hall meetings.
Right. It's been suggested that one of the things we should do is play hardball and do a couple things. Go on their turf and do town halls. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but I think the very least that we can do is I'm starting to do outreach into typically more conservative media outlets, because you can't leave those fields alone. You can't let you've talked about the extraordinary volume of lies that are going on. You have to counter that. You have to meet them there and tell people what's happening, so that they have to be challenged at some point in time. So we're looking forward to those challenges, doing our town halls here virtually and in person. And as you suggested, you go everywhere to hear people, because, boy, they sure want a voice right now.
We do. We really do. And to that, to the idea of the lies, the massive volume of lies is, it's not even reversal. That's not even the way to. I shared a video recently of Marco Rubio from years ago, standing on the floor of the chamber and passionately talking about how we promised Ukraine that we would stand with them against Russia, and then to see him on that couch next to J.D. Vance while they ambushed President Zelensky. I mean, what upside down world are we living in, sir?
Well, let me put that into a larger context of why people should care so much. First, we all want peace, and I've been to Ukraine 4 times since the war has started and seen the utter devastation. And, they're facing a force 4 times larger than they are. They weren't expected to last 3 days, never mind 3 years. But, you don't want a peace where Russia wins. Right, the extraordinary number of war crimes that they have committed. 93% of their attacks are on civilian targets. So what you saw there was in the vote with the United Nations and cutting off aid, including intelligence. You're seeing a new world order. You're seeing we are a fundamentally different country than we were a few weeks ago. Unrecognizable to our allies, if we have allies. And I think as a result, we're fundamentally alone, therefore less safe. And it's important to couple this with cutting off aid to USAID, the humanitarian branch of who we are to the rest of the world. That was as bad or worse because it's disconnected us with the world, and I think we're siding with the bad guys, and we've lost a lot of our soul.
We really have. And I mean, so much news today alone, to your point about our standing in the world and these meetings, emergency meetings we know that leaders are having to try to decide what does the global dynamic look like without the United States having such a prominent position. And then today with now they're not really going to be tariffs. We'll remove these tariffs. The stock market's up and down. And then the threat of today, possibly the order of the executive orders to eliminate the Department of Education, which isn't even legal. I mean, it's chaos, and it's a lot, sir. It really is.
No, and they've just started. And I want to tell folks is they get it's harder to confront when they're throwing 50 things out at one time.
Yes.
Right? How do you get the public focused on that? What struck me was one of his first executive orders on the first day was to withdraw again from the Paris Accord to deal with climate change. Well, I think our children and their children's children will be most angry with us for what we did or didn't do on climate change. But it hardly gets any salience at all just because there's so much else.
Yeah.
You could talk for an hour on just the educational component. What made our country special? What made us excel in the world is when universal high school, when the GI Bill, when this advanced. What are we known for here in Chicago? Premier research institutions, universities that are just extraordinary. The rest of the world sends their kids to our schools, and that doesn't matter. That puts aside the fact that so much of what we do in the Department of Education does is help the least who are least able to afford this, an equal opportunity, the fundamental aspect of our Constitution, give everyone the opportunity, the pursuit of happiness. So, look, all I can say is, these are dark, dark days. We went through a lot of this with Trump won, and we ended up beating him. We won the midterms, and we ended up beating him. A lot of damage. The fear here is that there will be lasting damage that will take a long time to restore. But you mentioned something, and one of the things I want to close with is you can't let this overwhelm you. Well, my advice to people beyond getting engaged, getting involved, protesting, this is more important than it was in the 60s, is you got to take care of yourself. So many of my constituents, friends, families, staff, you can tell they're watching the news all the time, and it's really having an effect on them. I think you'd agree. You got to take a break from it every once in a while. You got to have some fun. You got to stay close to your friends and family. You got to stay healthy because we need you for the fight.
Excellent. And I just want, before we go, let you know that a listener said, thank you. Tell Congressman Quigley that we thank him for being there for us, and we need more people like him in politics. So, by the way, Congressman, there's a comedy show every Thursday night in your district starting tonight at Tata's Kitchen and Social at 5700 West Irving Park Road. Speaking of having a good time. So we'd love to have you sometime.
Highly recommended. Let me know. We'll go.
Excellent. Be well. Thank you for that. I know you gave me a little extra time, and I'm greedy that way. Be well, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
You
Bye
too.
now.
Bye.